My name is Layla, I'm 31 years old, and right now I feel like a stranger in my own home. There's a weight on my chest every time I walk through the front door, a heaviness that wasn't there before. It started the day my sister-in-law moved in. I thought I was helping her, giving her a safe place during a rough patch. But instead of gratitude, she gave me venom. One night, standing in the very kitchen I designed and paid for, she looked me in the eye and told me to know my place. The first time she walked through my door with her suitcase, I felt a flicker of unease that I buried under a smile. My husband's sister, Amira, had just gone through a brutal breakup, and we both agreed she needed a place to land. I told myself it would be temporary, a few weeks, maybe a couple of months. I wanted to be the bigger person, the supportive sister-in-law. But I had no idea that by opening my door, I was unlocking a flood of chaos that would drown me in my own home. At first, she was polite, even sweet. She cooked dinner one night, left thank you notes on the fridge, and insisted she would help with groceries. I remember thinking, maybe this won't be so bad. But the cracks began showing quickly. She lingered in the kitchen at odd hours, leaving half-washed dishes in the sink. She claimed the best spot on the couch and turned the living room into her personal office, scattering papers, clothes, and coffee mugs like breadcrumbs. When I gently asked her to tidy up, she laughed it off, not apologetic, not malicious, just dismissive. I wanted to keep the peace. That was always my instinct, to smooth over, to compromise, to make room for others even if it meant shrinking myself. But slowly, the small slights turned sharp. She started commenting on how I cooked, how I decorated, even how I spoke. One evening, she told my husband in front of me, "You know, Layla's too soft. She lets people walk all over her." She smiled when she said it, like it was a joke, but her eyes locked on mine with something darker. And then came that night. I had just cleaned the kitchen, wiped every counter, stacked every dish. She walked in, rummaged through the fridge, and left everything out, milk on the counter, vegetables on the cutting board, wrappers everywhere. When I reminded her to clean up, she turned to me, smirked, and said, "You need to know your place. This isn't just your house. It's mine too now." For a moment, I couldn't breathe. My place? In my house? The walls around me blurred, my chest tightened, and I felt something inside me snap. I wanted to scream, to throw her words back at her. But all I did was stand there, frozen, my fists clenched so tight my nails dug into my palms. She brushed past me like I was invisible, leaving me in the ruins of my silence. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, my husband asleep beside me, my body shaking with unspoken rage. I thought about every time I had let someone else decide my worth, every moment I swallowed my pride to avoid conflict, every memory of staying small so others could take up space. And now, in the very home I worked for, in the very space I poured my soul into, I was being told I didn't belong. I knew something had to change. I just didn't know yet that the change had to start with me. The next morning, I woke up before the sun rose. My eyes burned from lack of sleep, but I couldn't stay in bed any longer. The silence of the house was almost cruel, mocking me with the illusion of peace. I tiptoed into the kitchen, hoping for a few minutes alone with my coffee before Amira woke up, before the air turned heavy again. But the mess from last night was still there. Crumbs on the counter, sticky rings on the table, the milk carton sweating lukewarm on the counter as if daring me to clean it up. Something in me twisted. I picked it all up in silence, my jaw tight, my chest aching with words I never said. And as I scrubbed the table, I thought about my mother. She used to tell me, "Layla, a woman's home is her crown. Protect it, because it protects you." I used to watch her sweep our little apartment every morning before work, humming quietly as if she were blessing the floors with every stroke of the broom. No matter how tired she was, she made that home glow with her presence. When I bought this house, I swore I'd carry that same pride, that I'd build a place where peace lived in the walls. But now? Now my house felt like a cage I paid for. I carried my coffee to the living room, only to find Amira's shoes kicked off in the middle of the floor, her jacket tossed over the arm of the couch. She wasn't even awake, and already her presence was everywhere. I wanted to scream. Instead, I sipped my coffee in silence, letting the bitterness cut through the lump in my throat. When she finally woke up, she came downstairs in one of my shirts. Not borrowed. Not asked. Just taken. A loose white tee I wore to bed on lazy Sundays. She stretched, yawned, and said, "This is so comfy. You should tell me where you shop." I stared at her. I wanted to rip the shirt right off her. Instead, I forced a smile so tight it hurt my cheeks. "That's mine." She blinked, feigning innocence. "Oh. Sorry." She didn't sound sorry. She didn't even take it off. She just walked past me, her bare feet slapping against the hardwood, as if nothing had happened. That was the moment I realized this wasn't about space. It wasn't about kindness or family or temporary arrangements. This was about power. She wanted to see how far she could push me, how much I would let her take before I broke. That night, when my husband came home, I tried to bring it up. I told him how uncomfortable I felt, how she crossed boundaries. He rubbed his temples, exhaustion written all over his face. "Layla, she's going through a lot right now. Don't take it personally. Just give her time. Give her time." Those words felt like a knife. I wasn't asking for patience, I was begging for respect. But instead of standing by me, he asked me to stand down. And because I loved him, because I wanted to be the supportive wife, I swallowed my protest. I nodded, even though my heart was breaking. But inside, I knew, every time I stayed silent, I was teaching her it was okay. Every time I gave her time, I was stealing time from myself. That night, I couldn't sleep again. I lay in the dark, replaying her words in my mind, "Know your place." And I kept asking myself, what was my place? Was it to clean up after her? To make space for her disrespect? To let her steal pieces of me until I was invisible in my own home? No. For the first time in a long time, anger felt cleaner than guilt. It lit a fire in me. I didn't know how yet, but I promised myself one thing: I was going to take my house back. And more than that, I was going to take myself back. The following days blurred together, each one a mirror of the last. I woke up earlier than usual, not because I wanted to, but because I couldn't bear the thought of stepping into my kitchen after Amira had already claimed it. It was like she marked her territory with every careless act: crumbs left on the counter, dirty spoons abandoned in the sink, the faint smell of her perfume lingering on the couch cushions I once curled into for comfort. I started to feel like a guest in my own home. I would tiptoe around, holding my breath when I passed her in the hallway, lowering my voice in conversations with my husband so she wouldn't overhear. It was exhausting, like living with a shadow that was louder than me, sharper than me, bolder than me. And yet, in those quiet, stolen moments when I managed to be alone, I found myself thinking back to a younger version of me, the girl who promised herself she'd never let anyone make her feel small. I was 19 when I first learned what it meant to be invisible. I was working part-time at a clothing store, juggling college and bills, when my manager constantly overlooked me. He praised others for ideas I had whispered, gave shifts to people who barely showed up, and scolded me for mistakes I hadn't made. I remember one day, standing in the stockroom with tears streaming down my face, whispering to myself, "One day, no one will make you feel this way again." But there I was, a decade later, in my own house, letting it happen all over again. Amira's words haunted me. Know your place. The audacity of it gnawed at my insides. I started noticing how often she slipped those little daggers into conversation. One evening, as I served dinner, she smirked and said, "Oh, Layla, you really don't season enough. That's why he always adds salt." My husband chuckled, not cruelly, not intentionally, but it stung all the same. The look in her eyes wasn't playful. It was possession. She was staking a claim, bit by bit, as though tearing me down gave her strength. Another night, I was folding laundry in the living room when she plopped down beside me and said, "You know, you could make this place so much nicer if you just listened to me. Your taste is, well, it's okay, but a little outdated. You should let me redecorate." I froze, clutching one of my husband's shirts so tightly my knuckles turned white. My house, the one I saved for, fought for, cried for, and she wanted to strip it bare and call it her own canvas. I swallowed my words again. Because that's what I did best, swallow, hide, shrink. But inside, something began to shift. Every insult was a brick, and one by one, they were building a wall inside me. Not one to hide behind, but one I would eventually climb over. It came to a breaking point one Saturday morning. I woke up early, determined to clean the house top to bottom before Amira even stirred. I wanted to reclaim at least a fraction of control. I swept, mopped, folded, scrubbed. By the time the sun had fully risen, the house gleamed. For the first time in weeks, I felt a flicker of peace. And then she came down. Hair messy, eyes half open, dragging her feet across the spotless floor I had just mopped. She poured cereal into a bowl, spilling flakes onto the counter, sloshed milk that dripped down the cabinet, and left the carton open on the table. I stood there, watching her undo hours of my work in seconds. My throat burned, my chest heaved, and before I could stop myself, I snapped. Amira, can you please clean up after yourself? This is my house, and I spend every day picking up your mess. It's exhausting. The silence that followed was deafening. She looked at me slowly, her eyes narrowing, and then, she laughed. Not a nervous laugh, not a kind one. A sharp, cutting laugh that sliced me open. Your house, she repeated, tilting her head. You should really learn to share. I live here too. And honestly, if it weren't for me, this place would be lifeless. You should thank me for bringing some energy into it. Her words stung, but it was her tone that broke me. Arrogant. Mocking. As if she had every right to diminish me under my own roof. I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. My husband walked in just then, catching only the tail end of the tension. What's going on? He asked, his voice heavy with confusion. Nothing, Amira sang sweetly, flashing him an innocent smile. Layla's just a little stressed. She should really relax more. And just like that, she walked away, leaving me standing there, trembling with rage and humiliation. My husband rubbed my arm gently, whispering, "Don't let her get to you." But what he didn't understand was that she already had. That night, I lay awake again. I stared at the ceiling, tears prickling at the corners of my eyes, my heart pounding so loudly I swore it would wake him. I thought about my mother's words. I thought about that 19-year-old girl in the stockroom. I thought about every version of me that had stayed silent to keep the peace. And I made a silent vow. I would not be erased in my own home. Not by Amira. Not by silence. Not by anyone. The next week became a test of endurance I didn't sign up for. Every day, Amira seemed to find a new way to remind me of my silence. She started taking longer showers, leaving the bathroom foggy and damp, steam clinging to the walls like her presence clung to my skin. She borrowed my hairbrush without asking, used my expensive lotions, even left her jewelry tangled with mine on my vanity. It was as if she was weaving herself into every part of my life until I couldn't tell where I ended and she began. The worst part was how easily my husband dismissed it. Whenever I brought up the little things, he'd sigh and tell me not to make everything a war. She's family, he'd say. This is temporary. Temporary. The word started to feel like a curse. Temporary mess. Temporary disrespect. Temporary invasion. But nothing about it felt temporary when I was the one living with the weight of her every move. I started spending more time outside just to escape the house. I'd sit in my car, parked in the driveway, pretending to scroll on my phone, when really I was just breathing. Sometimes I'd drive to the grocery store without needing anything, just for the relief of fluorescent aisles and strangers' faces. Anywhere felt more like home than my own home did. One afternoon, I came back from one of those drives to find Amira sprawled across the couch, her laptop open, my favorite throw blanket wrapped around her shoulders. She didn't even glance up when I walked in. She was laughing loudly at something on her screen, crumbs from a bag of chips scattering into the cushions. I froze. That blanket was mine. It wasn't expensive, but it meant something. My grandmother had crocheted it for me before she passed. Every stitch was a memory, every thread a reminder of the woman who raised me with stories and warmth. And there it was, crumpled beneath Amira, stained with orange powder from her fingers. "Amira," I said, my voice sharper than I intended. She looked up, finally, eyebrows raised in mock innocence. "What?" "That blanket, it's really special to me. Could you not?" "Oh, relax," she cut in, rolling her eyes. "It's just a blanket. Don't be so dramatic. Just a blanket." The words hit me like a slap. My grandmother's hands, twisted with arthritis, weaving that blanket while humming the same lullaby she once sang to me. The nights I wrapped myself in it during storms, feeling safe because it smelled faintly of her perfume. The years of memories woven into every loop of yarn. And to Amira, it was just a blanket. I couldn't stop the tears that pricked at my eyes. I turned away quickly, pretending to busy myself in the kitchen, swallowing the lump in my throat before it choked me. That night, when my husband came home, I tried again. My voice shook as I told him about the blanket, about the constant disrespect, about how small I felt. He sighed, ran his hand through his hair, and said, "Layla, you're reading too much into things. She doesn't mean it that way." I stared at him, stunned. "Doesn't mean it that way?" She meant every smirk, every dig, every careless step across my boundaries. I wanted to scream that he was blind, that he was choosing her comfort over my sanity. But instead, I bit my lip until I tasted blood and said nothing. Later, as I lay in bed, I wondered if this was who I had become, a woman who cried in silence while someone else ruled her world. I thought about the little girl I once was, the one who used to stand up for her friends in the playground, the teenager who swore she'd never let anyone silence her spirit. Where had she gone? Had I buried her so deep under layers of politeness and patience that she couldn't claw her way back out? The next morning, something inside me shifted again. It wasn't loud or explosive. It was quiet. Steady. A simmering flame instead of a roaring fire. I stood in the bathroom, staring at my reflection, my tired eyes rimmed red, my lips pressed into a thin line. And I whispered to myself, "This is not forever. This is not your ending." For the first time, I believed it. I didn't know how, and I didn't know when. But I knew one day soon, something was going to change. And this time, it would be me who decided what my place was, not Amira. I don't know exactly when the breaking point became the turning point. Maybe it was that night when Amira slammed a door in my face after another petty argument. Maybe it was when my husband, tired and half listening, told me to just ignore her one more time. Or maybe it was when I caught myself sitting in my car for hours, afraid to go inside the very home I had built with my own two hands. But I remember the moment it all came to a head. It was a Sunday afternoon. The sunlight poured through the windows, the air heavy with the smell of the stew I had been simmering all morning. Cooking was the one piece of myself I still clung to, the one thing that made me feel like I was nurturing a home instead of surviving inside of it. I had set the table carefully, polishing the silverware, placing the bowls just right. For a brief moment, it felt like peace. Then Amira walked in. She didn't just sit down, she took the seat at the head of the table, the one my grandmother always told me should belong to the woman of the house. She leaned back casually, her phone in hand, and without even looking at me, she said, "Next time, make more spice. This smells bland." Something inside me snapped. Not like before, when I swallowed the words until they burned me from the inside. No, this time, the fire rose all the way to my throat, and I let it out. Enough. The word hung in the air, heavy and sharp. Amira froze, blinking at me in surprise. Even my husband looked up from his glass, startled. "This is my house," I said, my voice trembling but strong. "Mine. I opened my door to you out of kindness, but you have mistaken kindness for weakness. You don't get to tell me who I am in my own home. You don't get to take my things, insult me, and laugh in my face as if I don't exist. This ends today. Amira scoffed, crossing her arms. Or what? Or you leave. The silence that followed was the loudest I'd ever heard. My heart pounded so hard I could feel it in my fingertips. I thought maybe my husband would jump in, tell me I was overreacting, beg me to calm down. But instead, he sat there, staring at me with a look I hadn't seen in years, respect. Amira's mouth opened, then closed. For once, she didn't have a comeback. She stood up, muttering under her breath, and walked away. The sound of her footsteps up the stairs felt like a victory drumbeat in my chest. Later that night, she packed a bag. She didn't say goodbye, didn't even slam the door. She just left. And when the silence settled over the house again, it was different. Softer. It didn't mock me anymore. It wrapped around me like that old blanket my grandmother made, reminding me that I was still here, still strong, still standing in the place that belonged to me. In the days that followed, I cleaned the house from top to bottom. Not because I had to, but because I wanted to. Every sweep of the broom, every wipe of the counter felt like reclaiming a piece of myself. The air was lighter. The walls seemed to breathe again. And when I sat on the couch with that blanket around my shoulders, I felt something I hadn't in months: peace. Looking back now, I realize it was never just about Amira. It was about me, the version of myself I had buried under layers of silence, the woman who thought keeping the peace was worth losing her voice. I had let too many people tell me to know my place, and I had believed them. But the truth is, no one gets to decide my place except me. My place is wherever I stand with dignity. My place is wherever I protect my peace. My place is my home, my heart, my life. And I will never, ever forget that again.